the two philosophies
about feeling
violating the ethics of an individual is violating ethics regardless, and yours is minimization of harm is better. So utilitarian versus deontological. From my standpoint, committing one unethical act is a violation of principle and ethics that can't be crossed. But I will admit, there's not like a hard line. It's you know.
I think that is silly, to be honest with you.
I mean, I respect you, you know, but they're very strong philosophical positions held by most people.
I believe that less suffering is better, and that I am willing to.
I will tell you something you won't like to hear, though.
I'm willing to sully myself if that's the outcome.
But I'll tell you something you're not going to want to hear, and I admit it's I'll call it dickish. Utilitarianism is typically the villain in most movies.
I don't care.
Utilitarianism is typically the villain in most movies.
I don't care.
Yeah. So for instance, like Thanos.
So I want to get to the utilitarianism. So let's get the first Tim Pool Matt Binder clip where they're talking about that.
But I'll give you an example of where I think the problem lies, and I'm going to throw it back to explain the Thanos moment with Sam Seder. Sam doesn't know what deontology or utilitarianism is. And when I was having a conversation with him and I referenced deontological thinking versus utilitarianism, he said, I don't understand what that is. How do you explain to someone who doesn't understand these concepts what they are? How would you propose I explain deontology or utilitarianism?
I don't know.
What if I use something that is common to most people, like a movie?
I mean, if you want to do that, sure.
Maybe if I'm dealing with someone who doesn't know philosophy, I'm not saying they have to know that.
This is the thing. I understand on your show and you like to have the discussion, but I don't deal in the philosophical. I just don't. I deal with actual policy and what's actually going on and what happens to people in real life.
What do you think I mean by philosophical?
It's nice to just opining about hypotheticals. You do that all the time.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay, then what?
Well, this is another really great point.
Sure.
I think that you and Sam lack the perspicacity to understand the context of the arguments and the substance of them. So in the context of Sam Seder, I made a reference to deontology, that a moral act against a single individual cannot be, an immoral act against a single individual shall not be taken, versus utilitarianism, which is more the argument that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, which is also a pop culture reference.
It's not objectively that funny, but which is also a pop culture reference at the end of that, like, kills me every time I watch that. Ryan, do you have the perspicacity to catch this pop culture reference?
No, that's a new one to me. Too obscure. Too obscure.
Too obscure. Deep cut. That's
real deep cut. Very few know that one.
Yeah. All right. I know there's probably some fucking Zoomers watching this who's like, I don't know it. That's Star Trek when Spock sacrifices himself. Anyway, doesn't matter. All right, so Ryan, you what do you do for a living?
I'm a philosophy professor.
All right, so you have the perspicacity. So I trust you on this. Let's now. What he's talking about is that we're going to watch a little bit of it, not actually this part, but you saw it in the cold open, right? That in the discussion with Sam Seder, he brings up Thanos to illustrate utilitarianism because Thanos is killing half the population, but that's supposed to lead the remaining half to have a better life. Footnote, not sure that the utilitarian calculations work out there, but
I suspect they don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably leading to less happiness actually by murdering half of the population of the entire world. Would be my suspicion, but
that seems to be what the Endgame movie showed. Like, no one seemed very happy 5 years later. So yeah, I think he did the calculation wrong, but he was acting on what he thought was the utilitarian thing.
Is that more of a like Malthusian? Is it a resource sharing thing? Never mind. I'm kind of
Thanos seemed to be a Malthusian. Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how he explained it. Was it the like what does he say, like the empty bellies or something, or the mouth?
Yeah.
Which is anyway.
Although for some reason his snap also kills off half the animals apparently, which would seem to like defeat the point. Like you still want all the animals there to eat, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that Thanos is actually probably not a good utilitarian. So I do not think his explanation is great, but it's okay. So I think that there can be some important qualifications to get into. But anyway, basically, he's comparing Sam's position to Thanos, which is kind of funny. And so, people had some fun with it. You saw a little bit of that in the video that the Avengers mashup thing, which we, has been around for quite a while. We used as part of our cold open. And Tim is apparently very offended by that. That people were making light of this serious point he was making. But since and look, Matt Bender doesn't like philosophy. Not everybody does. I do. This is give them an argument. We'll take the philosophy seriously. So let's look a little bit more into Tim's argument. Let's watch the second clip.
The idea being that we tend to see villainous people as those who are willing to sacrifice people for the sake of other people. We tend to see heroes as those who are willing to save the individual. Sam didn't know what those words meant.
Sure.
But they're hugely important to our policy in this country. The trolley problem, as it were, is a question about whether you're willing to kill a person to save 5 people. These are questions of deontology versus utilitarianism. Sam doesn't know those words. And I'm not saying it to be mean to him. It's not. Not everybody knows philosophy. But if I'm trying to convey ideas, the only thing I can do is try to find common ground between us. Big movie just came out, Avengers. So if you don't understand deontology or utilitarianism, which is the academic approach, I can try the pop culture approach. I love pop culture references. Instead of
I know you do, yeah.
Instead of actually addressing the substance of the issue, instead Sam and many others just mocked the idea that I had to dumb down the concepts for him because he didn't get it. You see, this is a problem. If I approach in good faith Sam with a question about philosophy that he cannot understand because he doesn't know these terms, so I try to find common ground and he mocks me for it, what is my incentive to even try?
He seems really hurt by the Thanos video.
He does, yes. Yeah. What the fuck try, man? Yeah.
If people aren't going to appreciate my deep cut pop culture references, why even bother?
Well, and look, I feel his pain. I've gotten in front of intro to philosophy classes and referred to movies nobody's ever heard of because I'm old, So I know it hurts.
Yeah, no, I'd love it if my students would make a video like that. If I based on my dumb pop culture references, that'd be great.
That would actually be amazing.
Yeah.
Although that might actually be an interesting difference. So something I know, Ryan, you brought up to me recently is so who are the two actors who were both watching people do impressions of them?
Oh, it was William Shatner and Jeff Goldblum. I guess there are a bunch of these, but I saw those two in particular, and it was they were both delightful because William Shatner was extremely offended by every impersonation of him. And Jeff Goldblum, look up the Jeff Goldblum. It's delightful. He is so enraptured by every impersonation. He's just in love with it. He's like, and he just goes on about like how much each even the bad impersonator, he's very kind to them. He's like, oh yeah, they got this thing that I do, and they got this thing that I do, and it was just great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that might be the difference right there. I mean, I think if I think if I said something like a little bit silly, and I'm with you, right? I mean, if I made some like goofy pop culture reference and like somebody like took the trouble to like do the clip of the movie with my face superimposed and like making the reference, then even if it was, I mean, at my expense, I would still find that I think pretty delightful, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Just I don't know. I mean, just don't. Look, okay. I understand, right? You're using these terms, and I will say, as one guy who likes philosophy to another, Tim, I don't generally expect people, to know what deontology is, for example, right? Like if I reference that, I explain it. I think that's a useful skill to have as a communicator. And yeah, I don't know. Sometimes things strike people as funny, and that's I think you're gonna have a happier life if you roll with it. That would be my
Absolutely.
that would be my heartfelt advice to Tim Pool.
I mean, he convinced me. I thought that Sam owned him before I saw his defense, and now I realize that he owned Sam. But I mean, we're kind of dancing around. We're kind of dancing around the fact that I mean, I've heard the term deontological, but I wouldn't have remembered what I meant if he just.
Sure. So let's actually do that.
Yeah. I just because we should foreground the whole thing. The problem isn't that he's completely mischaracterizing the exchange, because the problem wasn't that he was trying to explain to Sam what these terms mean. He was using it as like a gotcha that that was
exactly.
He was like
exactly
as if that was like QED, because pop culture utilitarian is usually the villain, and that's why Sam said, I don't care.
Yeah.
But, we want to see some. We're gonna get really mad if, let's say, you do splice up some Ben Burgis clips with like the most popular pop culture franchises of the day and post them all over TikTok as the producer. I'm going to be furious.
Very, very.
Bring on the Morbius memes.
Yeah. If you really want to own us, please do a lot of that. And make sure you mention the show every time. So...
Yeah. But sorry, let's not to derail us. I need to learn what deontology
Yeah. Okay. So utilitarianism is the view that it's a form of consequentialism. Consequentialism is the view that morality is about consequences, that actions are morally, the morally right thing to do is the thing that has the best consequences. Utilitarianism specifically says the kind of consequences we're interested in are maximizing happiness and minimizing suffering. I think you could probably nitpick that, but that's maybe good enough for now. Deontology is the view that there are moral rules that you should follow, even if even if there are bad consequences sometimes. Right? That's a very quick and dirty. If anybody else wants to jump in on that.
Could you give me some pop culture references? I'm not sure I understand either of those definitions unless you connect it to Marvel.
Is there like a Stranger Things example? I haven't seen the show, but I can maybe understand that a little more.
Yeah. Okay, so Stranger Things. There's something called the Upside Down. No, I'm not going to do that. So okay. So far so good. I will say you might be a little confused though. Or at least I was first time I talked about this. Like, okay, but why is he bringing up utilitarianism and deontology to Sam, right? I mean, like, to be fair to Tim Pool, I don't think even Tim Pool is just being like randomly finding people, like randomly like asking guests, by the way, right? Here's a list of philosophical terms. Tell me if you know what they are, right? Like, so I went and looked up the context of this. And I think the context is really interesting, right? And the reference to the trolley problem is also slightly annoying to me because I don't get an overwhelming sense that Tim knows what the problem is supposed to be, right? It's like the trolley problem. What's the problem, right? Let's just do 30 seconds on that, right? So I mean the thing, this originally comes from this paper by Philippa Foot. So it's called, Abortion and the Doctrine of Double Effect. I might be getting that name slightly wrong, but that's the paper. And in that paper, she has 1 million examples because she's making this super subtle point about the doctrine of double effect, which is this principle for how to decide really difficult moral dilemmas. And she's sort of defending it for a lot of the paper, but she ends up rejecting it at the end. None of that matters for now. The key thing is this example that she has. That's the foot quote. So Edward is the driver of a trolley whose brakes have just failed. On the track ahead of him are 5 people. The banks are so steep, they're not able to get off the track in time. The hare has a spur leading off to the right, and Edward can turn the trolley onto it. Unfortunately, there's one person on the right-hand track. Edward can turn the trolley, killing 1, or he can refrain from turning the trolley, killing 5. Foot thinks it's obvious that that this is the right thing to do, right? Although she contrasts it with some cases where, similar things might not be right, but, she thinks this is obviously the right thing to do. So far, there's no trolley problem. There's just a trolley example. The actual problem comes from a paper by Judith Jarvis Thompson. Thompson wrote a zillion papers about this. I think this is the first one. Somebody finds out I'm wrong about that, go ahead and correct me. But it's called Killing, Letting Die, the Trolley Problem. And as far as I know, this is the first place the phrase problem is introduced. And she has this other example. This is the Thompson quote. George is on a footbridge over the trolley tracks. He knows trolleys, and he can see that the one approaching the bridge is out of control. On the track back of the bridge, there are 5 people. The banks are so steep, they will not be able to get off the track in time. George knows that the only way to stop an out-of-control trolley is drop a very heavy weight onto the path, but the only available sufficiently heavy weight is a fat man also watching the trolley from the footbridge. George can shove the fat man onto the track in the path of the trolley, or can refrain from doing this, letting the 5 die. Okay, so the problem is supposed to be, why is it that the first one seems okay and the second one doesn't? Right? That's the problem. That intuitively it seems like the right thing to do to turn the track, doesn't seem like the right thing to do to push the man. Although I can't think about that quote without thinking about an intro to philosophy class I taught at the University of Miami many years ago, where there were I remember there was these 2 girls who were leaving class, and this is like the most Miami conversation I ever overheard. One of them turns to the other, like, I don't know, if he was that fat, man, how great was his life anyway? But most of us think that would be bad. All right. Importantly, for where we're going with this, the problem is supposed to be why it is that this one, even though the trade-off kind of seems the same, this one thing seems to be morally wrong in a way that the other one doesn't, right? So it's not like Thompson thinks that anytime you're ever doing anything even the teensy tiniest bit sorted in order to try to minimize harm, you're doing something wrong, right? That's not the point. The point is that there are certain kinds of things you can do in that aim that nevertheless seem wrong. And the question is how to figure out the principles that guide those decisions, which very small pedantic pet peeve, but 99% of the time I see people use the phrase the trolley problem. They don't quite seem to get that that's the problem. Okay, with that said, let's watch. I'm going to try to do this quickly because Greg was supposed to come on at 8:30, and I want to get to that in the next few minutes. We're running a little bit late, but I do want to just show this. So this is just a little sample of the stuff, the part of Tim Pool's conversation with Sam Seder before he brings up deontology and utilitarianism and and Thanos and all that stuff, to give you the context for why he's bringing it up. All right, just going to do a screen share of this one. All right, here we go.
In the democracy, the hardest choice in the world is to choose between the lesser of 2 evils.
Well, I'm voting.
And the fact is that you can vote for somebody who has no chance of winning, but it's more or less the exact same act. You're just you might as well go out and paint the mural.
I'm supporting Tulsi and to a lesser extent Andrew Yang, and so either one of them will get my vote.
And
I think,
but I'm talking about in the general election. I mean,
I'm going to vote for either of them, no matter what happens. Well, I might vote for myself.
Well,
I'm more of a union collective bargaining type mentality, in that we must stand up and strike against whatever, even if we're on the losing side,
well,
right?
I agree with the idea of withholding your labor, but the fact is that, Tim, is that voting is not about your labor. It is it is simply a number.
I don't mean that. I mean, like, if you're at work and you had 2 managers and you were getting stiffed on pay, and one said, I'll cut your hours, but I'll give you better healthcare. And the other said, no, I'll give you the healthcare, but you got to work, extra hours. Or you could strike and say, no, give me what I want. right?
Yeah,
I'm not going to choose.
Withholding your labor against the capitalist class is a far different dynamic than wasting your vote. It just simply is.
Well, so I mean, well, hold on. Like, which Democrat would I vote for? You know what I mean? It's
the one who is the nominee.
Absolutely not. Biden? No way.
Let
me think. Kamala Harris? No way. She locked up innocent people, man. That's nuts. Tulsi Gabbard, a major in the National Guard with real military experience, who was anti-war.
I'm not telling you who to vote for in the primary, but the fact of the matter is that if Kamala Harris does not win the nomination, she, writing her in is useless act.
Would you vote for Kamala Harris if she got the nomination?
I would vote against Donald Trump.
But Kamala Harris locked up innocent people.
I am aware of that.
Oh, dude.
Donald Trump.
I mean, man.
Donald Trump. He has literally kidnapped children who will never be reunited with their parents. They are in foster homes and they will never be reunited.
I mean, there's an entirely more complicated issue. What's going on with the border.
What I just told you is perfectly clear.
Okay, so that's the context, right? I want to make everybody super clear on this, because this is why all of this stuff about utilitarianism, deontology, and the trolley problem, the context for the whole thing is, you just saw in that clip, Tim telling Sam that I'm not gonna, if it's anybody but Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang, all right. If it's anybody but those two people, then which, by the way, this, like, Bernie Sanders was in that election, but somehow Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang, those are you guys. But anyway, whatever. If it's anybody but them, he wouldn't vote for the Democratic nominee against Trump. He also wouldn't vote for Trump because he's not going to choose the lesser evil, because the lesser evil is still evil. And it's all pushing the fat man onto the trolley track. It's all, Thanos snapping his fingers and murdering half the population of the entire human race, and animals. It's all on that level. Right? It's all objectionable on that level. Just, voting for the, making a, harm minimization decision in a swing state, you might as well be wiping out half of the human race. And we know that the focusing on minimizing harm is bad, because that reminds them of utilitarianism. Utilitarianism reminds them of the bad guys in the movies. Okay. That's the argument. And there's a lot we can say about this argument, but I do just want to, there is all right, so we watched the Pool Binder stuff where they're talking about all, trolley problem and utilitarianism and everything. We watched, both the, the funny part, that we did as the cold open, and also the context of it. But there is something really important that happened in between those. So do we have our Tim Pool solo clip? So this is Tim Pool. Remember, he gave 3 options for what he was going to do in the general election. If Tulsi or Yang wasn't nominated, write in Tulsi, write in Andrew Yang, or vote for himself. So, if anybody wants to take a quick, write down their answer or whatever, which of these they think he did, let's watch and see what he actually decided to do. The context of this clip is he's just finished reading off Donald Trump's website, where he lists his second, where he says, this is my second term agenda. And it's all stuff like, I'm going to create jobs and make sure that we get back to normal after COVID. And it's all super vague about how it's going to happen. But that's what he's just finished reading off. Here's the clip.
For this. But I will tell you what, I believe that any rational American would look at this and say, yeah, look, I'm sorry, to a lot of people, maybe it's boring to read through Trump's agenda item list, but I'm 90% there on what Trump is proposing right now. I agree. I have my concerns for sure. But I will tell you that with the Democrats' insanity, with the ongoing riots, with the endorsement of much of this violence, with these far leftists getting on board with the violence, I got to say, I will take Trump any day over these other groups.
You got to give it to the beanie. There's a really powerful mind working under there.
What happened to the deontological duty not to support someone who locked up innocent people? That's just gone now?
I guess. Yeah, I mean, like he thinks Donald Trump is going to, create jobs and I don't know, make restore order after the riots that were going on in summer 2020, and if a few kids are going to be put in cages at the other end of that equation, then so be it.
Sounds like Thanos reasoning to me.
Yeah, that was my take on this. It's like, okay, look, let's run with, for the sake of argument, the idea that making a harm minimization decision in like the ballot box and and like whatever. I don't if somebody tells me they don't want to do that, I'm not going to like denounce them. I don't say they're a horrible person. I get it, right? I understand why you might not want to do that. If somebody wants if you live in a swing state, you want my advice, I'll give you my advice. But look, if people aren't excited about going out and voting for Democrats, the Democrats should nominate better people and get them more excited, right? That's on them. But but like, I don't actually think making a harm minimization decision in a swing state voting booth is similar to Thanos snapping his fingers. I actually think there are morally relevant disanalogies between those two cases. But let's run with it for the sake of argument that that Kant would say that you have to write in Tulsi Gabbard. I don't actually think so, but let's just pretend yes, right? That if you're a real deontology guy, you got to write in Tulsi or Gabbard or Tim Pool. Those are your choices. Okay. Well, if so, I mean, who's Thanos now, motherfucker? You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive postgames on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.